Hey guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host Colin Price, and I am well aware that I am very late with this video. What can I say? It's been a crazy winter. Anyone living in the Midwest knows the weather we're having, of course the holiday season, and there's just been a lot going on in my work. That's basically my list of excuses. But nevertheless, I am here ready to do this video and talk about my 10 favorite films of 2025. This has been an incredible year for film. I do think that 2024 was better for horror in general, but in terms of overall film, this was kind of a hard list to make because there weren't a lot of movies that I saw this year that I just did not like. Okay, there was like The Woman in the Yard is like the one that readily pops to mind. I'm sure there were a couple others, but for the most part, I at least somewhat enjoyed virtually every movie that I went and saw this year. And because of that, it was pretty difficult to figure out which 10 I wanted to put on this list. But after careful consideration, I was able to narrow it down. Before we get started, I will offer a couple of disclaimers that I like to whenever I do this kind of video. One, this is my subjective opinion. If there's a movie that you really love that is not on this list, it doesn't even necessarily mean that I saw it and didn't like it. It might even just mean that I didn't see it. You know, a lot of critics who are on YouTube, they talk about every movie they see, and they see virtually every movie. They do this as their primary thing, like this is their job, this is what they do. That is not the case for me. In fact, I typically get to go see one, maybe two new movies every month, and then like I might be lucky to catch some when they come out on streaming. I don't have the time to see everything that comes out, so I typically will only go see something if it piques my interest from the get-go. So once again, if there's a movie that you really loved this year and it's not on my list, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that we disagree. It's just for whatever reason, I either haven't gotten around to watching it or I'm just not that interested in the premise.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
I also want to point out that because I only post so many videos every year, there are going to be quite a few movies on this list that are not videos that I've done like reviews for on this page. I don't review every movie that I watch, even if it's something I think is amazing. Sometimes I'll just take the time to, write about it on social media, on my Facebook, or I will just, not talk about it at all unless I'm just with friends recommending it. So this could very likely be the first time you're hearing me talk about some of these. And hey, that's cool too.
Would you please?
All right, let's get started with number 10. Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. Now, I've been a fan of this series since the first one came out in 1996. I remember seeing it in a little theater here in town back when like a movie ticket cost $1 and a small soda was like $1.50. So I'd get my allowance every weekend and then I would just take it to the theater and watch a new movie every week. Good times, can't do that crap no more, huh? Final Reckoning is supposedly the last film in the franchise. I seriously doubt that. I do believe this will be the last one that Tom Cruise is involved in, but come on, Mission Impossible, they're not going to let go of that. They'll wait a couple of years and reboot it, and it won't be nearly as good as the last few of these have been, but we'll all go see it all the same. I heard a lot of people talking crap on this one. It was pretty divisive, and some of it I can agree with. I mean, if you're going to come at me and say the bad guy was really weak compared to some of the other villains in the franchise, yeah, you're right, he is. If you're going to say, it takes way too long for the movie to really start and get going because it takes an inordinate amount of time to catch you up on everything that's been happening in the last couple of movies, yeah, okay. But none of that really diminished my excitement of the movie or my enjoyment of the film. I thought that this was a terrific showcase, and, the stunts in these movies, they speak for themselves. Tom Cruise is a dangerously insane human being, but I love watching him jump off of crap. The submarine sequence in this movie alone took my breath away. At one point, I had to stop and make sure I was breathing. Some of the stuff in this film is incredibly intense, so I really didn't mind it taking a little while to get to that. That being said, though, it is going to affect my rewatchability of this film. It's definitely not my favorite of the franchise. I think at this point, Fallout still holds that title, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. I enjoyed it enough for it to be number 10 on this list. Okay, now moving on to a movie that I actually forgot came out this year. I almost didn't include it on the list because I could have sworn it was a 2024 release. But moving on to number 9, The Gorge. The Gorge is an action, sci-fi, romantic thriller. I don't know, this is one of those movies that you could say that it's any number of genres and it'd be hard for me to argue with you. It stars Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy as two snipers who are positioned on either side of this massive gorge, and they're given this very strict list of rules, like, you can't communicate with each other whatsoever, you can't leave your post whatsoever, you have to be here. I think, I did watch this a year ago, guys, so bear with me. I think it's like for a year they have to stay in this post and not leave for any reason. And the idea is there's something down in this gorge, something evil, and they have to watch and make sure that nothing comes out of it, basically. Or if something does, they have to eradicate it. They have to kill it. This is an interesting enough premise for me to get involved, and the trailer looked really great, so I couldn't wait to see this. I ended up watching this with my wife, and we both loved it. I would say that this is like the Resident Evil movie that we've all been waiting for, but it's not a Resident Evil movie. Especially once you come to find out what's going on with the gorge and what's down in it, and all of the sequences of action that follow. It really feels like you're in like Resident Evil 4 or 5, like that kind of storyline. And oh my gosh, I loved it. I wasn't crazy about some of the CG with some of the monsters in this movie. I couldn't say that I didn't have a blast watching it. This was a lot of fun. I could see myself easily revisiting this one once or twice a year. The premise was interesting. The actors were great. The last 10 or 15 minutes left something to be desired, though. That's why it's at number 9. Now here we are at number 8, Wake Up Dead Man. Wake Up Dead Man is the third Knives Out film. And when the first one came out a few years ago, I saw it in the theater. I loved it. I've seen it a few times, actually. And I can't explain why. But when the second one, Glass Onion, came out a few years back, I don't know if I just wasn't interested in it or if there were just a bunch of movies I wanted to watch instead. Like, what happened? But anyway, when this one was set to come out and I found out about it, I decided, okay, I'll go back and watch all 3 of these. And what I can say about Wake Up Dead Man is that it's quite a bit more serious than the first 2. And also the mystery in the heart of the film isn't nearly as complex. With Knives Out and with Glass Onion, you aren't always sure if what you're seeing is what you're seeing. There's a line of dialogue, and then a half hour later you'll find out there's a completely different context to that line of dialogue than what you thought. Things like that. Here, for the most part, the story and the mystery at the heart of this is pretty straightforward. How was this person killed? How did the killer make this happen? Because it seems to be an impossible crime. I love stuff like that. It really harkens back to some of my favorite Sherlock Holmes stories, like The Speckled Band, for example, where it's like, this person's dead, but we can't figure out how anyone got into this room. We can't figure out how this person was killed. We just know that they were killed. I love stuff like that. That's like my favorite kind of murder mystery. I almost care more about that kind of thing than I care about who the killer was. Usually I can figure that out or have at least a pretty educated guess. But I love movies like this where I'm watching it, I'm genuinely at a loss trying to figure out how anyone could have accomplished this. I thought it was amazing to see a murder mystery like that, because we don't get many like that anymore. Daniel Craig, of course, is great. So is Josh O'Connell as a priest in this. Some of the other actors, they're very good, but they're always good. Josh Brolin is always good. Glenn Close is always good. And with this ensemble, I think Mila Kunis felt a little bit out of place, but other than her, I thought everyone was terrific in this film. And also, I will say that it's a bit longer than the other films, but I was never bored by it. I don't think I was ever checking my watch. This was a good, solid murder mystery. And, added bonus, you can watch any of these movies out of order, or just watch the second one, or just watch the third one. They're not like so tied together that you have to watch all 3 in order. So if you haven't even seen the other Knives Out films, I would still recommend Wake Up Dead Man if you like murder mysteries. You don't have to watch the first 2 to watch this one. Just give it a shot. I did, and I'm really glad that I did. Number 7, The Long Walk. The Long Walk is based off a story by Stephen King. Actually, from what I understand, it was like the first story that he wrote. And, man, it's just... leave it to Stephen King to take a premise of just a bunch of people have to walk until only one of them is walking, like until one of them is left, and make that one of the scariest movies I've seen in a long time. On its face, this is not a complicated film, but it's really more about the characters and their interactions. You got Philip Seymour Hoffman's son is the main character, but really this is an ensemble piece. I wish just offhand I could remember the names of every actor in this. Obviously, I remember that Mark Hamill is the antagonist, is the military man who's kind of goading everybody on, and for some reason likes to talk about ball sacks a lot. But you get all of the Stephen King characters here. You get, the protagonist. You get the one who's really hopeful. You get the nerd. You get the bully. You get the one who thinks everything's kind of a big joke, and you know that the worst death of the movie is going to happen to that guy. But it really surprised me just how much this movie affected me. I'm someone who deals with gout and who deals with foot pains of various kinds. And so watching parts of this movie, definitely bothered me. I was like, I could never do that. Maybe when I was 16 or 17, I could have walked, 5 or 6 miles and no sweat. What the characters are made to do in this movie is just painful to watch. You are genuinely cringing when something goes wrong with one of these characters, whether it's a Charlie horse or someone breaks their ankle and then they have to continue to walk on that or they'll be killed. Some of this stuff is really scary, and man, it got me. I don't know what else I could say other than that. It really got me. Number 6, Frankenstein. Seriously, guys, how long have we been waiting for this one? Now just Guillermo del Toro just has to do Phantom of the Opera, right? Can we get that? I would say Hunchback of Notre Dame, but I feel like that one's been, I don't know. I don't know what he would do with that. But anyway, Frankenstein. We knew that this was going to be a thing. Guillermo del Toro announced this a while ago. In fact, for years he's talked about how much he loves the story. So this was always going to happen at some point, but I don't think anyone realized it was going to be quite this good. Here, Oscar Isaac plays Victor Frankenstein, and I will say that what I remember of the book, I read years and years ago, what I remember of the book, this is pretty close to it. There's certain sections of the movie that kind of wander into, what's the nicest way to put this? I'll say fan service, but I guess for Guillermo del Toro it would be fan service because he loves the story so much, but just, let's just say indulgence on his part. But Oscar Isaac plays Victor Frankenstein. He does a very good job. He definitely plays the character less like a mad scientist and more just like someone who's really hungry to prove a point. Unfortunately, once he proves that point about halfway through the movie and, gives life to this creature, he struggles with how he should feel from that point on. Oh, I've done it. This is my life's work. Now what? Now he's just kind of stuck with this creature, trying to educate it, and, he grows to resent it, and then we get the story of Frankenstein, where the monster escapes and, he starts to learn about humankind and the world around him, and then comes to learn to resent, in turn, the scientist. This was done really well from an acting standpoint and from a cinematography standpoint. I don't think too many people are going to argue that this is one of the best looking movies of the year, if not the best looking movie of the year. And Jacob Elordi as the monster, I hadn't even heard of this guy. I don't think I've seen anything else this guy's in. If I have, I'm completely unaware of it. But he was amazing. I hope he gets Best Supporting Actor. But it's the curse of Mia Goth for me. I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me. Mia Goth is in this. I can't stand her in most things. I just find her incredibly off-putting. And I thought that her character, her dual role in this film, just led to some of the weakest scenes. I almost felt like maybe not recasting her, but maybe cutting some of her scenes out entirely would have helped the flow of this movie. Basically, any time where it's just her and the monster having interactions with each other, it was completely off-putting to me. She was completely off-putting to me. I didn't buy their relationship for even a second. So if you'd taken those scenes out, I'd probably have liked this a lot better. It'd probably be up at number 2 or number 3. This is still an incredible adaptation of the book, though. So if you're a Mary Shelley fan, if you're a Guillermo del Toro fan, definitely give this one a look if you've got the 3 hours to do it. Number 5, Together. This one came as a surprise to me. I put this one off. I just was not convinced that I was going to like it. When I heard the initial premise that Dave Franco and Alison Brie are a couple and they're possibly just a very toxic couple. They've definitely got their issues. And that this unseen force was going to cause their bodies to gradually become so physically attracted to each other that they were going to begin to merge into one being. When I heard that concept, I thought, this is such a gimmick body horror film. I have no idea how this movie is going to be anything better than just that initial idea. And so I put off watching it, even when the reviews started coming out, and even when everyone was saying, no, this is a really good film. This is a really, really intelligent horror film. Well, okay, fine. It's out. I'll give it a shot. And man, I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. I'm sure it'll happen constantly throughout the rest of my life. This is a really smart movie about toxic relationships, about abusive relationships, and about physical attraction, how it is sometimes so hard to leave someone, even when you know how horrible that person, how horrible your relationship with that person is, and how much harm can come from it. You just can't walk away from it sometimes. And I thought that this film very beautifully, and with some pretty gnarly effects, gave that into body horror territory. I think this is the kind of movie that David Cronenberg would have directed directly following a divorce. Some very cringy scenes where they, start to fuse and then they have to very painfully rip away from each other. There's a really great one in the bathroom stall that had me going like, oh God. And what I have to say is like the best song choice for any sequence in a movie. The song that plays during the last scene of this film has to be the best like needle drop moment of the year, hands down. Check out Together, and if you're in a relationship, if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, all the better. Make it a date movie. I promise you'll remember it for a long time. Coming in at number 4, we have VHS Halloween. This is quite a jump from last year. I believe last year VHS Beyond, the one that we got in 2024, I believe that made number 8 or number 9 on my top 10 list. Yeah, VHS Halloween, this year's VHS, gets number 4. This is one of the best horror movies I've seen in a long time. And as far as horror anthologies, might be my favorite one that I've seen in several years. There was only like the second story that I wasn't that big a fan of. And then there was one involving a child torture that I was not too big on. But for the most part, the stories in this were really creepy, really exciting. Some of them were absolutely hilarious. Like the dark comedy was just smashed in this movie. Now, I'm not going to go and like do a breakdown of each story in VHS Halloween. If you're interested in that, I did post a review a few months ago on this page for VHS Halloween. You can check that out. I will say that the first and third stories were the best, and they were so good that even if I had hated every other story in this, it would still be on my top 10 list this year. That's how much I love VHS Halloween. Number 3, here we are getting into the nitty-gritty. Superman. This one was such a great surprise, guys. I mean, I knew going into it that I was going to like it, that I was going to have fun with it, because I knew that they were trying to get back to kind of the tone of the Christopher Reeve originals that I grew up watching. And there were so many moments in this film where I felt like a kid again watching it. And not just the nostalgia factor. They do use the John Williams theme a lot during it. And David Cornsweet as Clark Kent, Superman. He did such a great job. He really did remind me in a lot of ways of Christopher Reeve and the way that he played that character, from his absolute refusal to use profanity. So he's just walking around like, oh, golly gosh, and, darn it, and, oh, I'm such a jerk sometimes, and all this kind of like Boy Scout thing that Superman always kind of was. And then, don't get me wrong, I loved the Snyder stuff. I loved, Man of Steel was pretty good. Justice League. I mean, I didn't hate any of those movies, but this feels more like the Superman that I know, that I grew up with. Also, hello, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. This is probably the best Lex Luthor on screen that we've ever had. I will stand by that until there is a better one. But for now, he is the king. Sorry, Gene Hackman, rest in peace. Nicholas Hoult is Lex Luthor to me. This was just all around a good time. Probably the best time I've had sitting in a theater all year. Now, before I get into my top two, I will say that I went back and forth on this for a long time, and it really came down to one thing: rewatchability. One of these two films I will watch and rewatch more times than I will the other. So that's how I was finally able to say what gets the number 2 slot, what gets the number 1 slot. And here we go at number 2, because it was damn close. Weapons. I wasn't that big a fan of Barbarian, Zach Cregger's first film, when it came out. And so when I saw the teaser trailer for this, I thought, this looks really interesting, but I don't know. It's only this guy's second movie. I didn't know a whole lot about him, but I knew that I didn't like his first one. But still, this one seemed so intriguing that I had to see it, and I had to see it the opening weekend in the theater. And oh my gosh, this really blew me away. I'm such a big fan of Pulp Fiction in particular, movies where they give you these sequences, these little sections of story, and then you kind of have to piece together how everything fits. Because it's only really the last story, or maybe the last 2 stories, where they start giving you the reveals and the answers, and then you have to kind of go back and see how those reveals, how those answers fit into what you've already seen before. I love that, and I wish that more horror movies would take this kind of approach, because Weapons, as a story and the way that it develops, was so ingenious. And I love the fact that, once you get the reveal of what's going on, what did happen that made all these children kind of run out of their homes in the middle of the night, once you get to that reveal, yeah, it's kind of simplistic, but I really like that about it, because you're nothing that you're picturing in your head is going to be what it actually was. You're going to think it's something far more elaborate than what had actually happened. I will also say that Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, and especially Amy Madigan, hello, Best Supporting Actress, come on, especially Amy Madigan, were terrific in this movie. I hope that this is a horror film that we are all talking about 20 years from now, and not just something that's going to fade into the ether because there are just countless imitators of it. I really hope that Weapons stands the test of time, because I thought it was absolutely brilliant. All right, guys, here we go. Number 1. What's it going to be? Is it going to be Him? No, because that movie sucked. Is it going to be One Battle After Another? Probably not, because I haven't seen it yet. Sorry. I do mean to check it out, but I haven't seen it yet. Nope. Number 1 is going to be Sinners. Guys, I have a really hard time thinking of any movie that I'm going to like more than I like Sinners. Probably for the next few years. I don't know. Maybe Christopher Nolan's Odyssey will top it. But man, I've seen Sinners something like 6 or 7 times at this point, and it doesn't get old to me. This was such an inventive film. When it comes to people saying, oh, well, it's the same thing as From Dusk Till Dawn. This wouldn't exist if it wasn't for From Dusk Till Dawn. Fuck you. From Dusk Till Dawn wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Vamp. Vamp wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the, Ingrid Pitt vampire lesbian film from the 60s. Like, guys, it's not that the film is a brand new concept. It's what it has to say. This was such an interesting metaphor, using vampirism as a metaphor for cultural appropriation, but also just for the music industry in general. Music is such a big part of this film, and I loved that about it. All the musical numbers were great, but I love how music is a primary theme throughout the story, and how it's incorporated, and how the different characters, whether it's the vampires or whether it's the protagonistic characters, how they all kind of have seen history through each other's eyes. The primary villain of this, Remick, played by Jack O'Connell, he, was a slave in his own time before he was a vampire. And so now he sees these African-American characters and he says, guys, I get it. We're not all that different. You should be like me. We should all be the same. We should all be together. It's such an interesting way for a vampire to try to get someone to willingly submit to becoming this creature. And oh my gosh, when I did my review for Sinners and posted on this page, I could have talked about it for easily 2 or 3 hours. I'm not going to bore you guys to tears with that now, but it's easily my favorite movie of the year next to Weapons, and easily one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. That's it. That's my list of my top 10 favorite films of 2025. I don't know when I'm going to get back to doing more reviews on a more regular basis. It seems like every time I want to, then life just kind of gets in the way. But I'll update my page as regularly as possible. Thanks, guys, for watching, and stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.